Hey, Jack.
Hey, Jill. Welcome. I want to welcome everybody to our show, Jack and Jill Art and Culture Tell All. So, what is this for? Who is this for? It's for artists who want to take their education in all things business right up to that next level. So, what we're going to do is we're going to interview museum directors, art curators, people that do research, designers, let's see, stagers, art marketers, let's see, artists. And if artists want to be considered possibly for a show as a guest, they can email us. And at the end, I know that you've created a card with all their information and provide their story and how they have come to succeed so they can share with others. Because really, the crux of the situation here is that what we want to do is kind of help other artists and ourselves get better our game during this time, because it's a very different way in which we need to market and do things. So without further ado, Jill, I know you have a special guest.
We do. We have our friend Sophie Bonet. She is the curator at ArtServe in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And she's going to come on the show, and we're going to have a special treat because Sophie is actually an artist too. She's not just a curator. So she's going to discuss her work, and then she's also going to discuss being a curator and what that means for artists. So without further ado, I am going to bring Sophie on. Here we go.
Hello.
And Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, girls.
Hello, love.
How are you
How
today?
good to see you.
Good
Me
to see
too.
you. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on our
So
show.
honored.
Thank you. So, Sophie, we want to get right into it. We talked about how you are the curator at ArtServe in Fort Lauderdale, but
Okay.
you are also an amazing artist, and behind Sophie is her work. So, we're going to have Sophie talk about her work first and give us a whole background on yourself, talk about your education and how long you've been an artist and inspirations, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, thank you for having me again. My name is Sophie Bonet. I am an interdisciplinary artist and curator based in Miami, Florida. My background includes studies in anthropology, history, and fine arts. I have a little bit more than 15 years of experience working in the arts field from museum, galleries, and arts organizations. My interests include contemporary socio-cultural and socio-political issues, and I am the chief curator for ArtServe, an arts organization based in Fort Lauderdale, where I get to work with artists every single day of my life, creating and cultivating creative and safe platforms for multidisciplinary artists to develop and present meaningful works with the mission of empowering our communities and advancing the arts for social good.
Wonderful.
Really great.
Yeah.
Really great. Okay, so what are photograms you were going to ask, Jill?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is my work in the back. Um, and then we can definitely talk about my work. Like, I would like to, we can discuss kind of like the technical part first, and then we can talk about the concept a little
That's
bit.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
love
Okay.
it.
So I will say I definitely approach art through experimentation of the media, especially with non-conventional methods or forms of photography. My favorite technique is called photogram, as Jackie mentioned, which consists in creating photographic images without the use of a camera. So it basically consists of placing elements like three-dimensional, two-dimensional elements directly on a surface of photosensitive material, such as photographic paper, and then expose it to the light. Then this photosensitive material, like photographic paper, is developed using the same or similar processes used to print traditional black and white photography. So you can, so you can kind of like picture how it looks um, as any other traditional photo process. This happens in a dark room, in full darkness, or with a special kind of like red light that does not harm the process. And the result will be, in my case, like black and white, positive and negative image or composition. So the areas of the paper that appear white are those exposed to light. Are those that are covered, right, by the elements.
Okay.
And those exposed to the light will appear black and gray. And the interesting thing about this process is that every factor has can seriously generate a direct reaction in the final product. So for example, the variation of tones and textures, if you see my work up close, from whites to grays to blacks, will depend on the transparency of the elements that I use to create these compositions. Like glass, because light can travel through glass, right? And other factors that will kind of like dictate the final print are light and time, whether it's 3 seconds or 3 minutes that the paper is exposed to light. And then let's not forget that the printing is a multi-step chemical process that is performed in a photographic darkroom, or in my case, a homemade kitchen darkroom.
Yeah.
So here, the paper has to go from developer, which is the chemical that will transform the latent image to metallic silver particles,
Right.
and then stop bath, which is a chemical that will neutralize and dilute the developing process, and then the fixer and the wash, and then it has to dry. So that's more or less the process. You have you have to have a little bit of notion of photography to fully understand.
Of course.
But I hope I did a decent job explaining.
You did.
You did.
And I think that as I'm looking at it, it looks like there's a lot of, it can be about positive and negative space.
Yeah, and also I will say that my approach to the technique is fully experimental. I really never know what I'm gonna get. I do have an idea. I have a vision. I will create the composition, and I know what results I want to achieve. But it's really hard to know for sure because I'm not a machine. Even if I'm doing testings and stuff like that, like I kind of like the surprise aspect of my process. It's like magic.
Yes.
It is.
When it appears and it's finally there. So.
Yeah, that's great. How did you become a curator? That's always a great. I know the story is interesting, so why don't you tell us?
Okay, so how did I become a curator? It kind of happened organically. I never thought I would pursue a curatorial practice. But at the beginning of my career, I did some museum work. I did some research and conservation for museums, and I work with great curators here and abroad. And I really connected with the complexity of the work because it would involve everything that I always enjoy doing, like my biggest passions, like
research,
creative direction, the investigation process, the conceptualization of artistic experiences. And then the opportunity was presented to me and I took it. And I've been curating my own material for over 5 years now. And I can tell you that my curatorial practice has evolved and expanded in ways that I never imagined. I've curated like probably over 50 shows and collections, and I have worked with amazing artists, and I've collaborated with amazing curators, and I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
My additional question to you is, how does being an artist help your curation?
Okay, so being an artist makes me more sensitive to artists' needs, and it helps me in the way that I can relate to some of their struggles and challenges. I can understand, I can understand everything that goes into conceptualizing, producing, and presenting your work. So, I feel like I want to think that I am a better curator because of that.
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
can see that. And being a curator at ArtServe now with COVID, what are your responsibilities? I know you're doing these really great interviews, like art talks. Tell
Yes.
us about those.
Yeah, I mean, and my ArtServe has been such a great opportunity for me. Like, I genuinely love it.
Hmm.
ArtServe, they have been so welcoming and supportive in letting me develop my practice in alignment to their mission and values. And I'm constantly encouraged to create and explore concepts that I'm really passionate about, and produce socially conscious exhibition and programming, like those virtual engagements.
Right.
That is huge for me. That is huge for me because that is exactly what I want to do in this moment in my life. And for the people that are not familiar with ArtServe, we are an arts incubator based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We have a really, really cool gallery space where we curate multidisciplinary exhibitions and artistic experiences. But we're also developing professional development programs designed for artists. We have classes, workshops, and we're still growing in that department. But we have a great team working on that sector, which is really exciting. And obviously, because of COVID, our facility is closed. So at this moment, but we're still doing a lot of these things and programs virtually, and we're working on adapting to a like this new crazy time, and transferring a lot of our programming to a digital platform.
Yeah. I noticed there's a gallery when you walk in the left-hand side. I think it's called Rosen Fine Art.
So in addition to that, we also have studio spaces for artists, great artists,
Yeah.
such as Jackie.
Jackie is
She's
a
one of our resident artists. We love, actually, her studio is like right next to my office, and there's like a window in between. So sometimes I'm like, I'm peeking to see what she's working on. It's really, really great.
so
Oh,
neither,
it's fabulous.
neither of you
Love
get
it there.
you
Huh?
guys, you guys don't get anything done because you're
Yeah,
next.
every once in a while, she'll be poking through and I'll come around. I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? It's
Yeah.
so great to be right next door to her. And, we're open for classes though, right?
Yeah.
We
Yes,
have classes now. That's great.
yes, that is something that we obviously we have to start developing as this whole pandemic situation progresses. It's going to be a process of adaptation.
Hmm.
But we're moving forward. We keep going, and we're working really hard to produce like high quality programming.
What I do love is even as an artist with a residency there, I walk in, I get my temperature taken, we got to wear the mask. Whenever there's a class, you're like 20 feet away. Like
Yeah.
it's all very, like they're not messing around. And it's a wonderful thing to get out in this, time in which we're all locked into our homes to be able to actually get out and create in a different environment with other people. Jill, what do you have to say, babe? I can tell. I can feel you have something to
And
add.
so the question I have for Sophie is that, so Jackie and I've also been on the Paint and Chat, which is an amazing programming that you guys have at ArtServe, because Jackie and I were both able to present our work and talk about ourselves, and it was this whole hour of amazing marketing for both Jackie and I. So and that's actually what we're trying to do as well. So also what I wanted to ask you was, wait, I'm gonna have to put my glasses on for this one.
Yeah, we're getting old, babe.
Okay. So we want to ask specifically about call to artists. When you do a call to artists at ArtServe, can you tell artists there's so many artists that end up not getting into a call to artists. Can you tell them why a lot of times that can happen, which sometimes it's not about the work, it's the presentation?
Technical question. I like it. So why is an artist not selected? I'm gonna get in trouble here.
No, but
Multiple reasons.
okay, can I say
Multiple
something?
reasons.
Say that their art is really good.
Yes,
We're
yes.
not talking about
Yeah.
an artist that just, doesn't work at all for the
Of
space.
course,
So an
yes.
artist is very good. However, they don't get in because
Well, it can be multiple reasons, like I said. It can be because the work is not in alignment with the exhibition's concept or criteria, if it's relevant or no for that particular show. The way that the work is presented, like Jill was mentioning, is super important, or if the submission or entry was done in the wrong manner, that can also affect the curator's decision. I will say presentation is a huge deal when submitting your portfolio or samples of your work. Poorly photographed, low resolution, etc. It can also be the quality or state of the work that might, it might not be at the level or standards that the curator is ambitioning for the show. And sometimes it's just because of space. I have been in situations of turning artists away because I literally didn't have enough space for more work. So,
right.
and I had to be selective because I would never compromise quality or design elements that I must have in my exhibitions. At ArtServe, we work with artists with artists that we recruit for exhibitions, but we also send out calls
Right.
to artists.
And how do how do the artists find the calls?
Usually they go to our website, but also we do some heavy marketing for some of the calls.
What is it, artserve.com? How do they find that?
It's artserve.org.
Perfect.
So yeah, and this I want to mention that we're also working on getting a new website. So in a couple of weeks we're gonna have a new platform as well. But I was saying, many times I've received submissions that are just not connected at all with the exhibition or the criteria. It's like if the artist never read the call.
Yeah.
So my advice is take your time, look for the right opportunity. Based on the type of work that you do, look for spaces that specialize in your type of work. And review the criteria before submitting. Make sure that your work reflects what the curator is asking for, and your submission has to be packaged professionally, with good quality images, with your bio, your artist statement, contact information, the whole thing, everything. Every call is different, but more or less that's kind of
Yes,
what.
because I know a lot of artists will pay the $50, the $35, the $75, whatever it is that they pay, and they've now submitted to something that doesn't even work within the confines of the concept.
That is true.
So that's a waste. And then they get a "I'm sorry" letter, and they're like, "What happened?" So it's just that little bit of research, or just actually looking at that call and reading it 3 times.
Sure.
Before you submit.
Yes, 100%.
Calling ArtServe and asking questions would probably be a good idea too, because I've had that happen where I got a call, I saw a call to artist, and I read through the whole thing and I said, okay, this totally works for me. But then all of a sudden I started to feel uneasy, and I sent an email to the curator and I said, okay, I'm sorry, but is this what you mean? And then they wrote back and said, well, thank you so much for asking this question.
Yeah.
And explained it to me further, because they didn't realize that they didn't include that in the call. So the questions are really, really important. So another question about a call is, when you ask, especially at ArtServe, you can sell your work in any of the shows. How does an artist price your work, let's say at a place like ArtServe? Where would they begin?
How to price your art? I mean, our ArtServe, but in general, I talk a lot about this with my artists. This can be a challenging task for some artists, especially at the beginning when they first start to sell. If they price too low, they can always leave some money on the table. Too high, it might be more difficult to sell, depending on who your client is. So you have to find your middle ground and value the work at a reasonable price, taking in consideration the cost of materials and supplies and all the hard costs, but also your honorarium, depending on how much time was invested in this process.
Right.
And in addition, there are other factors, like, is the work framed? Does it need to be shipped? And most importantly, I think the pricing needs to be consistent across all platforms. So, if you're in galleries or your site or your studio, the price has to kind of like be level and
Totally.
consistent all across. And one thing that I advise to my artists a lot is to don't let your emotions get on the way when pricing your work. I know that you put all that time and effort and passion in your work. It's your baby, and it's easy to get attached. But letting your emotions dictate the pricing of your work is just not cool. Price should be determined based on physical attributes, artistic attributes, not on personal value.
Right.
And I know this is hard, but that's just how it is. It's a business. And another thing I see a lot happening is poor negotiation. Poor negotiation. Artists you have to stand by your price. Yes. Anticipate to negotiate a small percentage, without evaluating the piece, but be ready to justify justify your price and stand by it.
Right.
Yes, I remember delivering a piece of art. It was $22.50. Now the same piece is $29.95. But at $22.50, I installed it in his home, and it just sang. It was really, really great in the house. And he said, "What's the best price?" And I said, $22.50. He said, "What's the discount?" I said, $22.50. He said, "All right, here's $22.50. Had I said, "Well, I'll take 10%, but I would have left there not feeling good, because I know when a piece is finished, when I don't want to part with it, and I still miss that piece. So there is value to the quality. There's also, I believe, if you look within your community and you see what other people are doing, like me, abstract artists, and how they're pricing their works, things that look similar to yours, you can kind of do that bit of research and see what people are doing, and that kind of gives you another gauge. Do you agree?
Market story.
That's Jackie, absolutely. So true. And it's
true.
hard for every artist to come up with that price, because you don't want to go under, you don't want to go up too high, and it really, it's hard. So Sophie, I have another question for you. How do you develop a relationship with a curator during this time with the pandemic? Because usually the way you develop relationships is by going to shows and meeting people, meeting artists, and meeting the curator in person. But now that's a little bit more difficult. So what are your suggestions for artists during this time to how they could develop a relationship with you?
The pandemic has definitely forced us to not reroute, but to explore new ways to stay connected. In our case, at ArtServe, we have developed a digital presence through our virtual programming. And my guess is that we will still be kind of in that realm for a longer period of time. Having said that, the best way to connect with curators, artists, and art professionals in general is through digital platforms at this point, especially now that there has been a burst of digital and virtual engagements, chats talks, panels, virtual galleries. You know, everyone is doing it.
Right.
Museums are doing it. So now you can take advantage of technology and establish connections with artists and curators from all over the world now, because we don't have that distant, you know,
Right.
limitation
Go
anymore. In
anywhere.
a way, yeah, and in a way, it's easier now because I feel that we are more open in a way. You
Mm.
know, we're more eager to connect, to collaborate, to come
Yes.
together.
People. Oh, how exciting.
So that's what I perceive. So that would be my advice.
So, for instance, if we didn't know one another and I sent you a video, hey, Sophie, I've heard a lot about you. I love your work and I love what you're doing at ArtServe. Your conceptual ideas are phenomenal, which are true. And I wanted to introduce myself. And this is all in video. I'm Jackie Rosen. I've been painting for X amount. This is my why. This is why I do what I do. This is how I do what I do. I just wanted to connect with you, introduce myself. If you ever think there's something that I might be right for me, you can always let me know. Maybe you could keep me in a file with your stable of artists. But I just wanted to say hi. God willing, I'll be seeing you at an opening soon, and thank you for your time. Does that work?
Yeah, that's actually great. I cannot tell you how many artists I have like met like that.
Mm.
And I'm talking amazing artists that otherwise I would have never, know about.
Right.
Like
So
it's a face-to-face thing.
It is.
yes and no, because even back in the days, 6 months ago, back
In
3
the
months
old days,
ago,
back in the old days,
back in the old days, there's always kind of like a, like a process. Um, and in the case of ArtServe, it's kind of like different than any other commercial galleries or museums because we're not just a gallery. We just don't like not only curate, but we are an arts incubator. We are at the service of the artists. You know, we help them through, the professional development, right? So we have to be welcoming and we have to be at the service of. Um, but even that, like the artists have to make an appointment. You cannot just show up with your portfolio, There's a protocol, there's a process.
mm,
But I feel that I'm very approachable. And honestly, somebody asked me these questions before, but I truly enjoy getting to know new artists. Like I enjoy that. I want to know about your work. And I tell this to everyone. If you're working on a new series or new work, like I want to know. Like I love art. I want to know more art, and that's what I
yeah.
do all day and I feed from that. So
And we love you. And on that note, we want to thank you for coming on the show. We are
thank you.
honored and thrilled to have you. We adore you. You're our friend, and we love your work. And we really enjoyed this. How about you, Jackie? You enjoyed
Yeah,
it?
she's all right, but what I really want to talk about is me.
Oh my
Okay, let's
gosh.
talk about somebody that's all right. No, Sophie is like such an added bonus. Like I don't know, at least 80% of the reason why I love where I work is because of the intellectual exchange that the two of us have, the appreciation for one another. I can't even begin to tell you I did what she did in a different realm, but I know how advanced she thinks and how the way she curates is really very unusual. She's very good at her job and she really does care about
It
the artists in the community.
Thank
And
you.
the girl's a breath of fresh air. What else do you want from
is
me?
extremely wonderful, approachable, and special. And on that
Yeah.
note, I'd like to say goodbye to everyone. And
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Bye, Sophie. I see you mañana.
All right, girl. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jackie.
you.
This was so fun. I appreciate all your information and all your wisdom,
We'll
darling.
see you again on another show, Sophie.
All right.
I
Okay,
love
Behave.
everybody.
No.
Whoa.